My name is Claire Jennings. I am 27 years old. And this story begins not with holiday cheer, but with the chill of something I had felt my whole life but never fully understood. Christmas should be joy, family, warmth, but in my home Christmas was always a stage. And tonight, as the lights glowed and the table shone with polished silver, I realized the smiles around me were not gifts, they were weapons. Let me introduce the people who shaped this story, each of them carrying secrets they believe I cannot see. My mother Linda is 55, elegant, sharp. A woman who knows how to cut with words softer than glass and sharper than knives. My father Robert is 58, proud and loud, the kind of man who believes strength is measured in control. My older brother Daniel is 30, charming but selfish, the golden child who has always basked in the spotlight while I lived in the shadows. My younger sister Emily is 24, quiet and pliant, smiling too much because silence has been her survival. Then there is Aunt Grace, my mother's older sister, 57, a woman who lives alone with her books and her truths, often dismissed but never blind. Finally, there is Jason, my childhood friend, 28, kind and steady, the only one who has ever seen me without the masks I was forced to wear. And me, Claire, 27, dressed in red silk tonight, sitting at a table that shines with ornaments and candlelight, surrounded by family who have never once made me feel like I belonged. The dining room glowed with decorations, gold garlands strung across the walls, the Christmas tree sparkling in the corner, every branch heavy with memories that were not mine, gifts piled high beneath it, each one carefully chosen to display love, though I knew love here was always conditional. My father carved the roast, his voice booming as he told a story about Daniel's promotion at work, his pride spilling across the table like wine. My mother smiled, her pearls glinting, her hand resting gently on his arm, her approval as loud as applause. Emily nodded, soft and sweet, agreeing with every word, while Daniel soaked in the attention as though it were his birthright. Grace sipped her wine quietly, her eyes scanning the room as though she were reading a book no one else had opened. And Jason, invited because he was family and everything but blood, sat beside me, his presence a lifeline, though I did not yet know how much I would need it. As the food was passed around the table, as laughter filled the air, as Christmas carols hummed softly in the background, I played my role, smiling when expected, laughing at the right moments, eating bites that tasted like nothing. Inside, however, I felt the same cold that had followed me since childhood, the sense that I was always an intruder in my own family, always one breath away from being reminded that I was not enough. The meal went on, course after course, my father's stories louder, my mother's smiles sharper, Daniel's arrogance brighter. Emily spoke little, glancing at me sometimes with pity, sometimes with fear. Grace asked small questions about my job, my apartment, her interest real in a room where interest was a performance. Jason nudged me once, his hand brushing mine under the table, his quiet strength telling me I was not as invisible as I felt. And then it happened. As the plates were cleared and dessert was brought out, as candles flickered and the room filled with warmth that was only surface deep, my mother turned to me. Her smile was perfect, practiced, her eyes bright with something cruel, and in front of everyone she said, "You don't deserve anything." The words landed like a blow, sharp and final, and for a moment the room went still. My father chuckled as though she had told a joke. Daniel smirked. Emily lowered her eyes, Grace's mouth tightened, Jason's hand gripped mine under the table. My heart pounded, my breath caught, but I did not cry. I did not argue. I did not give her the satisfaction of seeing me break. Instead, I sat straighter, I met her gaze, and I felt something inside me shift. This was not just another cruel remark, not just another dismissal. This was the moment my story began to change. I swallowed the lump in my throat, I smiled faintly, and I stood up. Now let me step away from the table for a moment and speak directly to you, the ones listening from the shadows of my story. You are sitting here with me, invisible but present, watching as my mother's words slice across the table, watching as the rest of my family pretends it was nothing. You know what it feels like to be dismissed, to be told you are less, to be made small in the place where you should be safe. If you are still with me, if you want to follow me deeper into the storm that begins with these words, then stay close. Because this Christmas is not about giving or receiving. This Christmas is about truth. I sat back down slowly, my mother's smile still fixed on her face, my father launching into another story. Daniel boasting, Emily nodding, Grace watching, Jason silent but burning with anger on my behalf. The dinner continued, the laughter returned, the surface smoothed over. But I knew something had changed. And as the night wore on, as the candles burned lower, as the tree glowed in the corner, I made a vow in my heart. My mother believed I did not deserve anything. She was wrong. I deserved everything. And she was about to learn that lesson in ways she could never forget. The hours after that Christmas dinner stretched long and silent inside me, even though the room had filled again with laughter and chatter, even though my mother had smoothed over her words with another toast, even though my father kept telling stories that filled the air with noise. I could still hear her voice, sharp and cold, telling me I didn't deserve anything, and it rang in my ears louder than any carol, louder than the laughter of my siblings, louder than the clink of glasses. I went to bed that night in my childhood room, the same room where I had cried as a child when she ignored my drawings, when she dismissed my achievements, when she gave my brother and sister the gifts she never gave me. The glow of the Christmas lights outside my window blurred as tears filled my eyes, but I refused to let them fall. I had cried enough in this house. Tonight would be different. Lying awake, I remembered the Christmases of my past. When Daniel got the bike he wanted, the one I had asked for too, but mine was a smaller version, cheaper, painted pink as if to mock me. When Emily got the family heirloom necklace on her 16th birthday, while I was told tradition didn't matter as much for me. When I applied for college scholarships and earned one, my mother said it was lucky, not talent, while she bragged about Daniel's grades to every neighbor in town. Every holiday had been a performance of love, with me always cast as the understudy. My mother's words tonight were not new. They were the final act of a play that had been running my entire life. In the days that followed, I began to notice everything with sharper eyes. My father boasting about Daniel's promotion while ignoring my own hard-earned achievements. Emily avoiding me when my mother scolded me, choosing silence over solidarity. Chloe's texts, the ones that came with excuses, saying she couldn't meet up because of family obligations, yet photos online showed her at brunches with my siblings instead. Jason's quiet questions, asking if I was okay. His concern like a lamp flickering in a dark room. I began to piece together that it wasn't just my mother who thought I didn't deserve anything. It was all of them, complicit in small ways, letting her cut me down and calling it family. One afternoon I decided to test what I already knew. I called my father and told him I had been offered a raise at work, a significant one, something I had earned through long nights and determination. He grunted, said that was good, and then changed the subject to Daniel's plans for buying a new car. Later I told Emily I was planning a trip for myself, something special, something I had saved for. She smiled nervously and said I should check with Mom before making such big decisions. Check with Mom, as if I were still a child, as if my independence was not mine to claim. The pattern was everywhere, and I realized my mother's voice had echoed so loudly in our home that it had shaped all of them. She had decided long ago that I was less, and they had agreed. But this time I would not let it stand. I began to look deeper, quietly, carefully, in ways they did not notice. I checked the old family safe where my father kept important documents, the one my mother guarded with obsession. Late at night, while everyone slept, I unlocked it using the code I had memorized years ago when my father forgot it and I was the one to remind him. Inside I found papers that told a story more cruel than I expected. There was a trust fund, one I had never been told about, set up by my grandmother before she passed. She had left equal shares for all three of us, me, Daniel, and Emily. But the papers showed changes made after her death, signatures that looked suspicious, amendments that cut my portion drastically while giving Daniel the lion's share. My mother's handwriting was there in notes, reminders, even corrections, as if she had orchestrated the entire theft. I stared at the documents in silence, my hands shaking, my throat tight. It wasn't just words anymore. It wasn't just dismissals or cruel smiles. They had stolen from me, rewritten my inheritance, carved me out of what my grandmother had meant for me. They hadn't just told me I didn't deserve anything. They had made it law. I slipped the papers back carefully, closed the safe, and returned to my room with my heart pounding. For the first time I felt a new kind of fire inside me, not just anger, not just hurt, but clarity. They had built their house on lies, and I had just found the cracks in the foundation. The next day I called Jason, the only person I trusted, and told him what I had found. He listened quietly, his voice steady, and when I finished he said, "You don't have to keep living in their story. You can write your own." His words settled into me like stone, steady and unshakable. I began to plan. I copied the documents when I could, photographed them in secret, stored them in places my family would never think to look. I searched through financial statements, old letters, and more evidence revealed itself. Money transferred into accounts Daniel controlled. Gifts purchased with funds that should have been shared. Emily's silence bought with trinkets and promises. Every page I collected was a weapon. Every photograph a blade. Every discovery a step closer to the truth I would one day lay before them. But I did not rush. I knew better than that. Revenge is not born in fire. Revenge is born in patience. I waited, I smiled, I played my role, and all the while I sharpened my silence into something deadly. Now let me speak directly to you, the ones who have been listening from the shadows of my story. You know the kind of betrayal that comes not in one blow but in 1,000 cuts, small enough to dismiss until the bleeding is too much to ignore. You know what it is to watch others take what was meant for you and smile as if it was theirs all along. You are sitting beside me now in the quiet of my room, watching as I copy papers by the light of a single lamp, watching as I piece together proof of a crime my own family committed against me. If you have ever been told you don't deserve anything, if you have ever been pushed aside, then stay with me, because what comes next is not silence. What comes next is fire. As winter days passed and the snow fell outside, as carols played in the streets and lights glowed in windows, my family carried on as though everything was normal. My mother baked cookies and handed them out to neighbors, smiling sweetly as though she were the embodiment of generosity. My father boasted about Daniel's successes to anyone who would listen. Emily stayed quiet, staying small, avoiding my eyes. They believed their lies were safe. They believed I would never know. But I did know. And every night I reminded myself. They thought I didn't deserve anything. But I deserved everything my grandmother left for me. Everything they stole, everything they dismissed. And soon, very soon, they would learn that lesson the hard way. The days after I discovered the truth felt strangely calm, as if the storm had passed even though I knew it hadn't yet begun. My mother believed she had silenced me with years of dismissal. My father believed his pride could shield him from consequences. Daniel believed he was untouchable, and Emily believed her silence would keep her safe. They had no idea that I now held proof of everything they had done. They had no idea that I was no longer the daughter they could cut down with a single smile. I waited, watched, and planned, knowing the moment would come when the stage was set perfectly. It arrived with the next Christmas, 1 year later, when my mother insisted we gather again for dinner in the house I had grown up in. The decorations were as extravagant as ever, garlands and ribbons and a tree covered in ornaments that had never once felt like mine. The table gleamed with polished silver. The roast filled the air with a rich scent, and laughter echoed through the halls. But beneath it all I felt the ground shifting. I had invited Jason again, knowing his presence would steady me, and I had slipped into my purse the folder I had prepared, the one holding every photograph, every copied document, every proof of their betrayal. When we gathered at the table, my father raised his glass to toast another year of blessings. My mother smiled as if she were the queen of the evening. Daniel smirked with arrogance. Emily sat small and silent. Grace watched with quiet intensity, and Jason's hand brushed mine under the table, reminding me I was not alone. Dinner passed with the usual performance. My father boasting, my mother criticizing in disguised compliments, Daniel basking in attention, Emily murmuring agreement. I played my role, smiling, nodding, eating bites that tasted of nothing. But when dessert was served, when the candles burned low, when the air grew still with the weight of expectation, I stood. My voice was steady, clear. Last year, I began. At this very table, Mom looked at me and said I didn't deserve anything. The room went silent. My mother's smile froze, my father frowned. Daniel shifted uncomfortably. Emily looked down, Grace's eyes sharpened, Jason squeezed my hand. I thought about those words, I continued. I thought about them all year. And I realized you weren't just talking about Christmas gifts or attention. You were talking about everything. And you were wrong. I placed the folder on the table, sliding it across the polished wood until it rested in front of my mother. She hesitated, her hand hovering, her smile cracking. What is this? She demanded. Proof, I said simply. My father opened it, his eyes scanning the first page, his color draining. Daniel leaned forward, confusion turning to fear. Emily gasped softly, her hand flying to her mouth. Grace leaned in, her eyes narrowing as she read. Jason sat still, his presence silent but powerful. It's the trust fund, I explained, my voice even. The one Grandma left for all of us. The one you changed after she died. The one you signed, Mom, cutting me out and giving Daniel more. The one you kept hidden, locked away, thinking I would never find it. But I did. I have copies of every page, every amendment, every transfer. I know the money you stole. I know the lies you told. And now so does everyone else. The room erupted in chaos. My father slammed the folder shut, shouting that I was ungrateful, that I was trying to destroy the family. My mother sputtered, denying, accusing me of forging documents, her voice rising with panic. Daniel swore it wasn't his fault, that he hadn't known, but the words sounded weak, hollow. Emily wept silently, whispering apologies, but too softly for anyone to hear. Grace spoke then, her voice cutting through the noise. I always suspected, she said calmly. I always knew something wasn't right. And now it's clear. Her words hung in the air like judgment, undeniable. My mother turned on me, her eyes burning. You'll ruin us, she hissed. You'll ruin this family. I met her gaze without flinching. No, I said. You ruined it the day you decided I didn't deserve anything. You ruined it when you stole what was mine. Tonight I'm not ruining this family. I'm freeing myself from it. Ethan's denials turned desperate. My father's anger turned wild. My mother's mask cracked completely. The perfect Christmas tableau shattered in front of them all. Now let me turn to you, the ones watching from the edges of this story. You have waited with me through silence, through discovery, through planning. And now you see the moment when truth takes center stage. You know the satisfaction of seeing lies burn in the light, of watching betrayal unravel under proof too heavy to deny. If you are still with me, if you feel the fire of this moment, then stay close, because this is the part of the story you never forget, the part where the one dismissed finally stands tall. Back at the table, the arguments raged, but I no longer listened. I had already filed the legal papers with David's help, already secured my rightful share, already closed every account they thought they controlled. They were ruined not because I had destroyed them, but because their lies had finally been revealed. Jason stood with me as I gathered my purse, his hand steady in mine. Grace nodded once, her eyes proud. Emily looked at me through tears, broken by the weight of her silence. My father shouted my name, my mother demanded I sit, Daniel cursed, but I did not stop. I walked to the door, opened it, and stepped out into the cold winter night. Snow fell softly around me, the world quiet and clean, the air sharp against my skin. I drew in a breath that tasted like freedom. Behind me, the house that had been my prison for so long echoed with chaos. Ahead of me stretched a future they could no longer steal. I smiled, not because it was Christmas, not because I had won, but because I had finally seen the truth. My mother was wrong. I did deserve something. I deserved everything. And from that night forward, I would never let anyone take it from me again.